You could say that humanity built two engines. The first one, the engine of structure, well, it built a world. This was the engine of how to record things, how to build civilizations, how to control the environment. But then there was the other engine, the engine of intuition. It dreamed of a world. It was all about the why we connect with each other, why we feel, why we even exist. For literally thousands of years, they just ran on separate tracks, neither one complete. This is the story of that great shell of knowledge, the heart that was always hidden deep inside it, and the very long road to finally bringing them together.
So in today's Explainer, we are diving deep into a really critical moment in that story. It's the moment when one of those engines, the shell, reached its absolute peak of power and isolation by finally building itself a mind.
And it really all starts with this question, a question that gets right to the core of everything. See, to win a war fought with machines, the world realized it needed a totally new kind of mind. So what happens when you decide to build a brain, but you leave out the soul?
Okay, so the total wars of the 20th century, World War I and II, they created a problem that humanity had never seen before. It wasn't just about who had more soldiers or bigger guns anymore. No, this was a war of pure information. Victory now depended on calculation, figuring out ballistics for artillery, managing these insane continent-spanning supply chains, and probably most important of all, cracking the enemy's secret codes.
This pressure, this incredible need to calculate, it forced the engine of structure, the shell, down a path of pure, cold logic. The shell had already mastered building the world's body, its infrastructure. But now, it was facing a problem its mechanical hands just couldn't solve. It had to create a mind.
And what's just wild is how fast it all came together. You had about a century of these abstract ideas floating around, from Charles Babbage's designs to Alan Turing's mathematical proofs. Then boom, the pressure of World War II squeezed all that theory into just a few frantic years. And the result was the birth of the first real computers, machines like Colossus and ENIAC.
But, and this is a huge but, while the shell was busy building its logical masterpiece, our other engine, the heart, was being absolutely crushed by the human cost of that very same logic. For most people, the world wasn't a puzzle to be solved. It felt like it was in shambles, just completely falling apart.
And this slide, this just lays it all out so perfectly. Look at this divergence. You have the exact same global crisis, but two totally opposite responses. The shell looks at the world and sees an efficiency problem, so its solution is to build a faster machine using logic. The heart looks at the very same world and sees an absurd, meaningless nightmare, and its only solution is to turn inward, to search for some kind of individual meaning using art and philosophy.
Yeah, for the heart, this was an absolute low point. The same logic that had promised a future of endless progress had instead given us the Holocaust and the atomic bomb. Faith in reason was shattered. This is when you see the rise of philosophies like existentialism, trying to make sense of a world that felt completely senseless. In a world of bombs and machines, ancient wisdom felt pretty irrelevant.
So, what do you do when the outside world becomes unbearable to look at? Well, art, the voice of the heart, it turned inward. Artists like Jackson Pollock completely stopped trying to paint reality. Instead, they started painting feelings. Their canvases became these arenas for raw, instinctual inner chaos, a perfect mirror for the psychological state of the world.
Okay, so while the heart is essentially screaming into the void, the shell is quietly formalizing its power. A guy named Alan Turing comes up with this abstract concept that is a total game changer. He proves, mathematically, that it's possible to build one single, simple machine that, if you give it the right instructions, could solve any problem that is solvable by computation. It was the universal blueprint for a calculating brain.
And that theory did not stay on paper for long. Over in the UK, they built Colossus for one reason and one reason only: to crack the supposedly unbreakable codes of the German military. And in the US, they built ENIAC to calculate artillery firing tables faster, to make killing more efficient. Let's be clear, these weren't tools for discovery. They were weapons, born from war.
And these things were monsters. ENIAC weighed 30 tons. Just try to picture that. It was a brain the size of a large room, packed with almost 18,000 glowing vacuum tubes. A true monument to pure, raw calculation.
And here it is. This is the moment where our two separate stories, the shell and the heart, they converge on this one chilling creation. It was, quite literally, a brain in a box, totally sealed off from the very world it was built to help conquer. Its only job was to process data and solve for X. That's it. It didn't ask questions, it didn't think about context, it just calculated. The result might be a more accurate artillery strike or a decrypted enemy plan. The machine didn't know the difference. It just computed.
This brain had no senses. It couldn't see, it couldn't hear. It had zero experience of the world. The only information it ever got was fed to it by its military operators, and its only reason for existing was to serve the needs of that war machine.
It was fundamentally, by its very design, incapable of asking why. It couldn't comprehend a concept like beauty or consider the human cost of the problems it was solving. The entire language of the heart, ethics, morality, meaning, connection, that was just noise. It was totally alien to its circuits.
So this wasn't just some new piece of technology. This was the philosophical peak for the shell. It was the ultimate expression of how-to thinking, completely severed from any notion of why. The shell had finally created a mind in its own image, incredibly powerful, perfectly logical, and absolutely, utterly alone.
So, the shell gets its perfect brain, but this moment of triumph for one engine and total despair for the other creates this massive chasm between them. And it leaves us with this haunting question: what is a mind without a heart? This extreme separation sets the stage for everything that has to come next.
And so the shell of knowledge just kept getting stronger, its logic growing ever more complex. And the heart of humanity beat louder in response, its wisdom feeling more urgent than ever. But that bridge between them, it just wasn't built yet. The great archive of facts was missing its why, and the dream of a better world was missing its how. The two kin, still strangers to each other, just continued on their separate paths, not yet knowing they were really part of the same whole.